So in this video, we're going to look at how to complete the encryption spreadsheet here. So task number one, we have a bunch of cells up here and they've got a message in. The way this encryption techniques works is that we write the message in vertically, and then to encrypt it, we read across the grid horizontally and join these lines of code together. And if you remember, that is called concatenation. So in Excel, we have a formula that will, a function that will do this for us. And if you need to remember this, then just remember that concatenate in Excel works the same way it does in other programming languages. So concatenation is the process of joining strings together. And here's an example of a concatenation function in Excel. So when you write a formula in Excel, remember we always have to start with an equal sign at the front of it. We then have the keyword concatenate, open the brackets, and then we have a comma separated list of the cells that contain the items we want to join together, and then a bracket at the end. So in this situation here, what's going to happen is this is going to join together all the string together, all of the piece of text in B3, C3, D3, E3, F3, B4, C4, D4, and so on. So all you got to do to fill in this, do this function is click in the cell down here underneath where it says decrypted message. I've color coded mine blue. I type in equals concatenate. You'll notice that Excel is auto completing. So if it doesn't auto complete correctly, that's because you've got spelling error. Open brackets, and then I click on the first cell I want, which is the cell with the letter C. I click on the comma, and then I type a comma in. Then I'm going to click on the O. And type comma in. I'm going to click on the M, comma, P, comma, U, comma, T, and so on. And I will carry on typing the rest of my formula in. At the very end of it, if you remember, we put a bracket, and if I press enter, you can see the start of the message, decrypted messages appearing down here. Now for sheet number 2 here, we're going to use the Caesar cipher. So this is where we take out a message, and what we do is we move all the letters along the alphabet a certain amount. In this case here, we're going to use an offset of 4. So we're going to shift all the letters along the alphabet 4 places. And the plain text message we're encrypting is the word encryption at the top here. Now I've got a lookup table over here. I've just written out the letters of the alphabet. Underneath those, we've got the numbers 1 to 26, and then we've got the letters of the alphabet again, which we'll use for decryption. So the first thing we need to do is we take the letters in our message here, and we're going to look them up in this table and work out the number. So for example, if we look up the letter E, we'll get the number 5. So what we've then got to do is we add the offset, which is 4, and that gives us an answer result of 9, and you can see we've got the 9 here. So just for a moment, have a quick look at this message here. This formula, you'll notice it says equals lookup C4, and then there's a big load of a red description here, and you can probably guess from the way it's highlighted on the top right here that is the lookup table. And then at the end of it, we're adding on C3, which is purple, and this is this number 4 here. So let's quickly have a look at how the lookup function works. So when we're using lookup, what Excel will do is it will look up a value in a table that you give it, and it will return another value based on the first one. So for example, you might have a table which has got the grade boundaries and the grades for a test. We give it a number, and the lookup function would look up the test score and return the grade like A, B, C, and so on. So the format of this is you say equals lookup, we then have a bracket, we then have this thing, the thing we're looking up, and then you have a comma, and then you have a table. So here's an example. In this case, we're going to look up the value C4, and we're going to look it up in a table that spans from O3 to AN. Now O3, you notice it's got dollars in front of the O and the 3, and AN has got a dollar in front of the AN and a dollar in front of the 4. And that's because in this situation here, we're using what are called absolute cell references. So the way that absolute cell references work, as it says in the top bullet point here, is that when you have a formula in a spreadsheet and you copy it and move it, and you copy it to another part of the spreadsheet, Excel will automatically edit the cell references, all of the cell references, to reflect the new position. So if you move it to the right, it will, for example, it will increase the column letter. if you move it down the spreadsheet, it will increase the row numbers, and it will do that automatically. And that's called relative cell referencing, and that's the standard way of cell referencing working. But sometimes we don't want these cell references to change, so the way we do that is we put a $sign in front of each part of the cell reference that you don't want to change. So you know itself, it looks like it makes it stick to using the row or the column. So in this case here, when we copy this formula around, C4 will change and it will become C5, C6, C7, for example, as you move it down, or D4, E4, F4 as you move it to the right. But because we've got the $signs in front of the O3, in front of the O and in front of the 3, because we've got dollars in front of the AN and in front of the 4, it will stick to using this table. In other words, it will edit the first part of the formula here, the C4, but it won't edit the table, and that's exactly what we want to do in our spreadsheet. Back to the spreadsheet. So here's our spreadsheet, and you'll notice that what we're doing is we're simply looking up the letter that we're trying to encrypt. We're looking it up in the table, and then we're adding on the offset at the very end. Now, this gives us the, as it says here, the letter value in the offset. And what we then do is we look up these numbers in this table over here. So the reason we've got numbers in the middle and letters at the bottom, if you click on the function up here, and then we click at the formula bar at the top of the spreadsheet, you will see it's using the lower two rows for its lookup table here. Now, have a look at this little formula here. You notice this one, we're actually using two lookup functions. There's one here, and there's a second one here, and they're being used inside an if statement. So we'll quickly have a look at how if statements work. So with an if statement, they work just like a conventional if statement does in any computer program. We have some kind of test, which is the blue thing. So it says equals if, and then we have a test, comma, and then in green, what we're going to do if this is true. So in the case of our example, we'll be using a lookup, and then what to do if the test is false, if the test isn't true. So in this case here, here's the example. If C5 is less than 26, we just do a simple lookup. However, if C5 is greater than 26, we need to, as you can see on the right here, subtract 26 from C5. And that's because in this case, the letter has been shifted off the end of the alphabet. So we need to move back to the start. So the kind of letters that fall off the end of the alphabet wrap around to the start. And if I just go over to the spreadsheet, in the spreadsheet, as you can see here, in our case, this cell reference here, number 29, the Y would fall off the end of the alphabet here. So it's actually moved over here somewhere. So what we need to do is we need to measure in from the start. And the way that we can do that is simply by subtracting 26, which you'll see is happening right here. So what we're going to do now, and this gives us this encrypted message right here. Now we can, down here, what we want you to do under encrypted message, we want you to concatenate the letters of that message together, which I'll quickly do here. And down here, what we're going to do is we're going to take these encrypted letters, we're then going to look them up in our table, we're going to subtract the offset, and we're going to get a decrypted letter then. Then we can look up that offset in the decrypted letter. Now the way we're going to do this is very easy. We're going to do something very simple. If you look at the row of the letters in here, we're going to do something very similar to this, these numbers here. So I'm going to go type in equals lookup, open brackets, and then I'm going to click on the letter I. I'm going to put a comma in, and then I'm going to drag over the letters and the numbers in my table. And you'll notice that it's auto-completed the table for me, and I'm going to put a bracket after that. And then I need to subtract from that. So at the end of my formula, I put a minus, and then I want to subtract the offset, and I press enter. And in this case, I've got the number 5, and 5 is great because that's going to look up this 5 here, and it's going to come back with the letter E. Now, what I'm going to need to do is if I just copy that across, so I clicked on the cell, and I click on this dot at the bottom right-hand corner and drag across. you'll notice that it goes all a bit wrong later on as we can move over to the right. And that is because if you look over here, it's using O through to AN. In the next cell, it's using P through to AO4. In other words, it's editing the formula. We don't want that to happen on the, we don't want it to edit the table. We don't want it to edit the lookup number. So I'm going to put a dollar in front of the letter O. Dollar, oops, put a dollar, not a pound. Dollar in front of the number 3, dollar in front of the AN, and a dollar in front of the 4. And then also that cell, the offset, I want it to stick to using C3 all the time. So a dollar in front of the C and a dollar in front of the 3. I'll press enter. And now if I copy my formula across, it will work in all but one situation. Now the one situation it won't work in is this one here, because as you can see, we've got a value of less than 0. It's fallen off the start of the alphabet. So if I just look up these numbers in my table, we can see the effect of this. If I type in equals lookup, and the thing that I'm looking up is the number, I put a comma in, and then I drag over the numbers and the lower row of letters in my lookup table, press enter, and you notice in the first case, it's perfect, it's got the letter E. And then if I drag across, it kind of goes a bit skew with. And the reason is because in this case, it's fallen off the end of the alphabet. Or it's fallen off the start of the alphabet, we've got an underflow. So if I look at the row here, where it's looking up the letter, you notice we've got this if function that we've used here. It said if the function is greater than 26, well in our case we want to say if the function is less than 26. So I'm going to click on the cell and edit this. I'm going to type in the if first of all. And I'm going to say if the letter that we've got, or the number value, is greater than or equal to 1, then I can just do a simple lookup. Otherwise, I'm going to put a comma at the end of that. I'm going to copy the lookup I've got here. I'm going to paste that afterwards, and this time I'm going to subtract. I'm going to add 26 to the value that I'm looking up. And because we've got an open bracket at the start of the if statement, we need a closed bracket at the end of the if statement, and we press enter. And we get this statement, and if I drag that across now, it won't quite work, and that's because, well, it does work. Fantastic. There we go. So now if I want to concatenate together all these letters to form the message, and I can do that with a simple concatenation. There we go, job done. Now in the final part of the spreadsheet, what we're doing is we're using two techniques here. The problem with the simple Caesar cipher is if you take letters and you look them up in a table and you always move the letter on exactly the same amount, it's very easy to use a thing called frequency analysis to break the code. So the way we overcome that with a double key is we have a message we want to encrypt. We then look up the letters in the table over here, but then what we do is we have a code word, a special code word. If I put my mouse over here, as you can see, it says if the code word is shorter than the message, it just repeats. If we had the code word, I don't know, Brian, we would write Brian, and then we'd start to write Brian again straight afterwards. Now what we do here is we look up the letter of the message and we write down their numbers, and then we look up the code word, letters in the code word, and look up their numbers. And then what we're going to do is we are going to sum together these two numbers, the number 4 and the number 3, and then we're going to add the offset. And the great thing about this is it means that if you've got a letter that occurs twice in our original message, it's going to encrypt to different values depending on where it is in the message. What we can then do is look up these values down here, and we can then we can take these numbers, look them up in our table, and we get this message here. To decrypt, what we're going to need to do, as it says here, we're going to have to add a formula using absolute cell references where necessary. The key thing here is we're going to have to look up these letters and turn them into a number. We can do that by doing a lookup in these lower, looking up the letter here and getting the number. What we're then going to need to do is use the numbers from the code word. We're going to have to subtract those, and that's going to give us a number that's left. and then we can use that. We're going to have to subtract the offset, and then we can take the result and look that up in our table here, and that will then give us the original message. Good luck with that. Now here's the final spreadsheet. So I'm going to click on the formula down here, in the blue cell. You can see this is the formula you need to use down here. I'm going to go into the Caesar Cipher spreadsheet, and if I click here, what it says, go into the Caesar Cipher sheet, click on what says letter offset. We can see this is the formula you need to use, and in the bottom cell here, this is the formula you need to use for the bottom row. And because these got absolute cell references, we can copy them all the way across the spreadsheet. Hope that helps.